Today's lesson, because you guys got some work to do now, is integers and a number line with some help from Scoob. The first thing we're going to talk about are what are integers. Shaggy and Scooby look very perplexed at the moment. So the definition of integer is all whole numbers and their opposites. And don't forget zero. Even though zero doesn't have an opposite and some don't even consider it a whole number, zero is included in the list of integers. So here are your positive integers, 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up, and you can keep counting. And these little dots here mean that those numbers go on forever and ever, as long as they're whole numbers. Those are integers. And then on the left side of 0, you have -1, -2, -3, and so on. And again, these three little dots represent that this continues on, -6, -7. So, for example, you could have a number as high as 125,231, and yes, that is an integer because it's whole. Or as low as, say, -752, that is also an integer because it's a whole number. Now, what numbers are not integers? Fractions, decimals, anything that is a part of a whole is not an integer. Integers have to be whole numbers. So, for example, 2/3, that's not an integer. 5.6 is not an integer. Pi is not an integer. Not that kind of pi, Scooby, but pi as in 3.14159. It goes on for a while. Some of you may have that memorized, but that is not an integer because it is not a whole number. Now we are going to discuss number lines with Velma. You see a number line here that represents the integers from -10 through 10. The numbers in blue are our positive integers, while the numbers in red are our negative integers. You'll notice 0 is in black. It is neither positive nor negative, but it is still considered an integer. You notice as well that the numbers get larger as you move to the right. And even though the number values seem to increase, as you go to the left, your number values are actually getting smaller. 1 is less than 5. While -1 is greater than -5. So let's look at those dots. There's your 1 and your 5. As we move to the right, our numbers are going to get larger. However, as we move to the left, any number on the number line that is farther left is smaller. So as we're going this way, you know that -5 is less than -1, or as it is written here, -1 is greater than -5. Now, Freddie looks a little bit perplexed. He wants to know what is absolute value. So let's help him out a little bit. The definition of absolute value is the distance between a number and 0. So I'm going to show you 2 points here. We're going to plot -6 and 6. I chose those 2 points because although they are not the same number and they don't have the same numerical value, they do have the same absolute value because they are the same distance from 0. So let me show you how that works. If I wanted to find the absolute value of 6, it's how far it is away from 0. So we're going to count the units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the absolute value of 6 is simply 6 because it's 6 units away. Now if we look at -6, it is also 6 units from 0. Watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And anytime you're talking about distance, it's always going to be positive. So even though we started at -6, we're still moving 6 units. That distance is still 6. So both -6 and 6 are 6 units away from 0, meaning they both have an absolute value of 6. Now let's look at another example. Still talking about absolute value here, and understanding that the distance between a number and 0 is its absolute value, we're going to use 2 different points, -9 and 2. Those numbers do not have the same absolute value. And I wanted to show you that those 2 lines there, those are the absolute value signs. I like to call that my happy zone because whatever you put inside, so for now we're going to talk about -9, no matter what you put inside, it's going to be positive. When you think happy, you think positive. So the absolute value of -9 is 9. And if you look at the number line, you can see it is 9 units from 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the absolute value is 9. 2 would also be represented like this. If I asked you to find the absolute value, you'd still use those same little lines. And the absolute value of 2 is 2. It stayed happy. It is also, if you look at the number line, 2 units, 1, 2, away from 0. And that is why the absolute value of 2 equals 2. Now we are going to discuss how to find the distance between points. To find the distance between any 2 points on a number line, all you need to do is add their absolute values. So don't want to give any spoilers away, but in the new movie Scoob, Shaggy and Scooby-Doo are beamed up to the Blue Falcon's ship, the Falcon Fury. And then on the flip side, you have Dastardly and Muttley, who went through a portal to the underworld. I'm going to represent this with a vertical number line. Think a thermometer, think distance when we're talking about above sea level or below sea level. We can use a number line vertically as well. The middle of this number line represents what we usually call sea level, or in this case, I'm just going to call it Earth, and maybe that's where the mystery machine is at the moment. Where Shaggy and Scooby are at is 3,000 feet above sea level, and where Dastardly and Muttley are is 1,000 feet below sea level, so we're going to represent that with the integer -1,000. My question to you is, what is the distance between where Shaggy and Scooby are and where Dastardly and Muttley are? So, looking back at the description, remember, to find the distance between 2 points on a number line, all you have to do is add their absolute values. And remember, that absolute value is simply the distance between a number, so in this case 3,000, and 0. And then here, the distance between -1,000 and 0. So looking at this number line, 3,000 is 3,000 away from 0. And even though we have a negative integer here at the bottom, that -1,000 is 1,000 away from 0. If we look at that with math symbols, the 3,000, or the absolute value of 3,000, plus the absolute value of -1,000 is going to give us 3,000 plus 1,000, which gives us 4,000 feet. So Scooby and Shaggy are 4,000 feet away from where Dastardly and Muttley are. All right, in the words of Scooby-Doo, words or keywords. So that you understand, in real life scenario questions, there are certain terms that are going to indicate whether we're talking about positive integers or negative integers. So in green, we're going to talk about all the words that are going to represent a situation where a positive integer is involved. A deposit means that you're putting money into your bank account is increasing. Anytime you see the word gain, maybe we're talking about gaining yards in a football game or gaining pounds. Those are all things where we're going to be talking about a positive integer. Temperatures above 0. That means that those integers are positive. Above sea level, like we talked about in our previous example with Scooby-Doo and Shaggy going up into the sky, that would be positive. Earning money. Anytime you see the word earn, we're talking about a positive integer. On the flip side of that, negative integers. If you have a withdrawal from your bank, you're taking money out, your bank account is going down. Anytime you see that word, we're talking about a negative integer. The word loss, that is also going to represent a negative integer. Temperatures below 0 on a thermometer, below sea level, and spending money are all situations where negative integers should be used. For example, if you bought something at a store, you need to give them, say, $7. So we're going to represent that with the integer -7 because you gave that money to the store, you spent it. All right, Scoob promises this is our last ring. More vocabulary. Additive inverse. This is a very fancy way to just say the opposite of a number. When you add a number with its additive inverse, you're just going to get 0. So you have a sum of 0. Because of that, they also call it a zero pair. So additive inverse and zero pair, those are the same thing. They have the same absolute value, meaning that they are the same distance from 0. Here are some examples. 6 and -6. They are opposites, so -6 is the additive inverse of 6. If you added those two numbers together, you would get 0. 15 and -15. They have the same absolute value. They both have the absolute value of 15. And when you add them together, you get 0. So those are additive inverses, as well as 23 and -23. All right? It was definitely the last thing. Scoob wasn't lying. I hope you guys have a great day. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me.